Buongiorno, buonasera e benvenuti amici. Welcome my friends, my name is Vincenzo and welcome to my channel. And as you know, the channel is Fountain Pen Therapy. Again, another year end, and as part of that year end, I'd like to do a retrospective of 2024 to see how much fountain pen therapy I was able to acquire, experience, and share with you in 2024. And I thought that the way I would structure my video today is really to look back at that original video that I published back in January of 2023, now 2 years ago, where I set out what the mission of fountain pen therapy would be when I started the YouTube channel, which and you know, this whole adventure with this YouTube reviews is just a compliment to the fountain pen therapy that I was experiencing, but just by myself at that time through fountain pen collecting, paper collecting, ink collecting, etc., etc. I think the YouTube channel just permitted me to get more fountain pen therapy and perhaps share some of it with you. So I thought that the way I would start this video this year, I've got a lot of things, a lot of ground to cover, so you will permit me, I've got some notes so I don't forget anything, but I think the way I would like to start this whole review of 2024 is by turning back and take a look at this original introductory video of my first published YouTube video. So as you can see from that, I hope you appreciated that. I thought it was really good, especially for my first. You know, we talked about what the mission and the objective of my channel was. Is essentially to share my passion in fountain pen therapy. And what is that fountain pen therapy? Well, it's, you know, passion, joy that one can associate with this beautiful hobby of ours. You know, getting inspiration and pleasure for the purposes of relaxation, for personal wellness. You know, I mentioned pleasure, mental health, calmness. You know, it's a stress relief, it's catharsis for me at least. It has enormous cerebral benefits in terms of even my daily routine. You know, it's been proven that by writing out, you retain more. And you facilitate learning, facilitate memory, and you just retain so much more when you do so by writing as opposed to typing. You know, there's the whole artistic creativity. I have this inner need to express that sometimes people say, you know, your videos, maybe you can skip those, and the music, and it's too loud. And I'm sorry, folks. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this for, first of all, I just enjoy doing it. So I need the fountain pen therapy. Any of you who don't like those introductory videos can easily skip over them. They're time-stamped. and proceed to what interests you. But I'm not going to give those up. I mean, that's what gives me pleasure, joy, catharsis, stress relief, and all the rest of it. And I would be contradicting my own mission if I delete them. If nothing else, it provide me some satisfaction, and hopefully some of you will appreciate it. Can they be improved? Obviously. Can we look at sound and maybe even better B-roll? Why not? Sure, all of that will be explored, but it won't be abandoned. And you know, through these YouTube videos, I think I'm trying to attract not only the enthusiast or the experienced collector, but also any novel or curious newbie that might want to understand why we do all of this. And I think I have to reach out more to the new folks in this hobby, and maybe run the risk of boring some of the more experienced ones. But I think it's important that we grow as a community, and especially with our youngsters. They're so caught up with their phones and their typing and their computers and their electronic media that I think they forget even how to write, and let alone write with a writing instrument. So I think it's important that we get some of the young guys, young people, more interested. And you know, there's also the whole appreciation of the writing instrument, the nib, the ink, the paper, the beautiful pen, and the materials that are being used. To me, they're just a lot more than just a tool to lay down ink. They are, in certain ways, you know, it's like a beautiful painting or a beautiful sculpture. And some of them are just artistically just there to be appreciated. So there's all of that needs to be looked at as well. And, you know, we're never short of exploring. We need to explore more pens, but also more inks and more paper, and appreciate all of that as part of the hobby. So though that is the mission of fountain pen therapy, and now I think when we look at a retrospective, we've got to look at what did we do in 2024 in pursuit of those objectives. Well, I propose to look at two things, first of all. One, as a YouTube reviewer or as a YouTube channel, where were we, what did we do, what did we accomplish, and where are we going? And secondly, as a fountain pen enthusiast, collector is a big word, but more enthusiast, you know, what did we do, what did we acquire, what did we achieve in pursuit of that fountain pen therapy? And how did we share that with you all? So, as a reviewer, I must say that and here I'm going to be boasting, so you will permit that, you know, I'm really proud of what I've done in just, you know, such a short time. What is it now, 2 years? You know, the whole channel started on June 29, 2023, so almost to the day, 2 years ago. And on that first year, I managed to get 2,000 subscribers. We are now at about 5,800 subscribers, so almost tripled the number of subscribers. I have 5 times the views. You know, we've introduced not only pen reviews and unboxings and ink reviews. I introduced some series, a series of all kinds of things where I've, you know, looked at nibs, we've looked at paper, we've looked at journaling, we've looked at vacations, we have my annual awards, we visited a pen factory, you know, we've introduced a weekly recap, and you know, I'm really proud of the weekly recap because I think it was probably the first of its kind, in the sense that I not only shared with you my views on some of the tools we use, but also kind of put to the foreground other YouTube reviewers. And that was, I think, almost unheard of. Why would one of the views are, why are you promoting your competitors? I don't see them as my competitors. I see them as my, you know, members of our community who are there to share some of the same values that I have. And those are one of the things that I think that I really enjoy doing, is putting on the spot, in a positive way, other reviewers who are working hard to provide us with some entertainment. And why not? I don't feel that is something that I should abandon. In fact, I may want to expand it for 2025. So the weekly recap was, I think, a novelty, and that I've seen others kind of pick up on the same theme, which is good. I calculated that we have now published 346 videos. I have reviewed in excess of 300 pens, and enjoyed every one of them. I've got to tell you, every one of them. So, what is there? What does the YouTube channel Fountain Pen Therapy hold for the future? Well, I have a list of objectives, and I don't know if I'm going to get to them all in 2025. First of all, I'd like to get more interviews going on the channel of not only pen makers and pen retailers, but also other interviewers. I would love nothing more than to be able to interview people like Shaq MD or S.B. Brown or Inquiring Minds, etc., etc., etc. I don't know if they would have me, but I'm certainly going to try to reach out to all of these great people in our community and see what kind of affiliations we can have, what kind of things we can share, and at the same time entertain you. I'm definitely going to be looking into assisting some of the pen shows. I have not assisted one pen show in my lifetime, and I think it's time for me to do that in 2025. A busy schedule, but I'm going to pick and choose, and you know what? We'll try to fit that in. Probably going to be somewhere in the United States because it's just quicker to get to, but I'm not giving up on Europe at all, and maybe elsewhere. Speaking of Europe, I think reviewing or taking a vacation and at the same time enjoying this hobby, I don't think is mutually exclusive. In my case, my wife is more than patient, and you know what? If she will allow me, why not? I think I've got another pen factory to visit. I've reached out to them, and they've certainly expressed some interest. So there's that as well. I'd love to be able to do that again. I'm still thinking about the live show. Please weigh in on it. Let me know if you'd be interested in a live show. I got to tell you, during the holidays, I did some work in terms of putting together the programs and the software, and I'm just so hesitant because I'm a perfectionist, and as a perfectionist, when I cannot control the live aspect, the connection and all the rest of it, there's lag. It just, for me, it doesn't provide fountain pen therapy, but on the contrary, it provides a lot of stress, but of the unknown. But having said all of that, if you guys really, in a majority sort of a fashion, would prefer that the weekly recap be a live, a sort of a weekly or even bi-weekly or bi-monthly event or even monthly event, why not? I'm seriously, look into it and pay some attention to it and do that. So, and speaking of the weekly recap, I think I'd like to kind of modify it, give it a different twist, and maybe introduce a little bit of a new format. But keeping what's good, getting rid of what's bad, and maybe adding what I think would be of interest to all concerned. In terms of the variety of products you will see on this channel, it will not stop. I don't only review expensive Italian or it's expensive pen maker pens. I love the Chinese pen market. I think it's a market that I always will have an interest in, keen interest. I will try to keep you all informed. The Indian pen makers are also on my list, no doubt. Of course, the Italians are there, but they're getting more and more expensive to follow. and some of the more traditional pen makers will also be featured. And I'll get into that in just a few minutes when we review, my whole year as a pen enthusiast. So that's, I think, gives you a summary of where we were and where we will be, or where we will try to be in 2025 as a YouTube channel. Okay, now as a pen enthusiast, I want to look at three areas. We're going to look at pens, we're going to look at paper, and we're going to look at inks. Those are the three top topics of interest, obviously. Now, what did we do in 2025 as a pen enthusiast? Well, I think that 2024, I should say. I think that 2024 is for me anyway, personally, the year of discovery. And I've grown as a pen collector and as a pen enthusiast in the following fashion. I mean, until 2024, I almost exclusively wrote with a stub nib. So every pen I would acquire would either be a 1.1, a 1.4, or a 1.5 stub. Where non-available, it would definitely have to be at least a broad, if not a double broad, but completely ignored the fine nib, the medium nib, the flex nib, the gold nib. And I think 2024 was a complete turnaround for me. I finally discovered the beauty of the fine nib and why so many people raved about, absolutely wanting the fine nib as opposed to any other type of nib on their pens. I couldn't understand it, why people would write with fine nib. And now I think that I've discovered a fine nib. And I think the fine nib, the beauty of the fine nib is also in the gold nib. And that's another discovery of mine in 2024. I've discovered so many beautiful gold nib pens that I would never even approached in the years prior. I realized, I think I finally come to the conclusion that there are certainly, without saying that steel nibs are completely undesirable, far from it. There's some beautiful steel nibs that could, you can give you lots of fountain pen therapy. But I think the gold nib is not to be underestimated anymore. Not in my collection in any event. I think I've discovered the gold nib, and which brings us to this whole area of the soft and the flex nib. 2024 was the discovery for me of the flex nib. In fact, it was more than a discovery, it became almost an obsession where I tried to compile all of the possible flex nibs on the market and to share that with you. And that provided me with an enormous amount of fountain pen therapy. I also discovered the vintage nib, more the vintage nib than the vintage pen, because the vintage pen is nothing but trouble, although there's some beautiful pens out there. But it was really, the interest was that was sparked in me was over the nib, that flexible, soft gold nib that somehow we've lost. The art of making an in-house soft gold nib has been lost. Some pen makers have tried to maintain it and have succeeded. I can speak of Scribo, I can speak of Magna Carta, I can speak of Pilot, but ultimately that soft flex nib, I guess, doesn't sell, because if it would, there'd be more of it, but so we have to, go backwards and acquire these vintage nibs, which is not easy, but I promise that in 2025 we will keep hunting for what I believe is more fountain pen therapy in those pens. It's also been the year where I've kind of been drawn away from the Yowo Bach German nib, steel nib. Without saying that I'm getting bored, but I'm getting bored with those nibs. I find they have really, they're all the same, and once you've tasted one, there's not much more there to give you. And my dilemma is, do you keep buying the same pen with a different material and with the same nib? And what fountain pen therapy does that provide? And I've come to the conclusion that it provides, for me at least, very little. But I've discovered another German nib, which was the Schmidt nib. And I think the Schmidt nib has given me probably more fountain pen therapy than the Yowo and the Bach put together. Does Yowo Bach, can they offer us, more fountain pen therapy? I think the answer there lies with Nibmeisters. And that's another thing I think in 2025 that we're going to be looking at, starting with Joshua Lax. I know I've been promising you that interview, and I think 2025 will see it through. And maybe that's where the key is. The key is in grinding your boring Yowo or Bach nibs and finding different types of grinds that give you that elusive originality that we normally wouldn't have in just standard, fine, medium, one stub and broad Yowo and Bach nibs. So there you have it. 2025 may be a year of experimentation, which leads me to talk about, I think, new pen makers that I will have to visit. In 2024, I discovered a bunch of them. And let me just look at my notes, I don't want to forget. Pilot. I think the only Pilot pens I owned were, some of the more inexpensive pens. Now I basically own a whole slew of the Pilot custom pens, right from the 74, 742, 743, 823, and keep going. I've discovered the Pelican nib. How can I not have known about the Pelican nib and the Pelican pen? I discovered the Sailor, finally. I've discovered a few Italian pen makers. I had Leonardo on my list. I had Stipula on my list. Of course, I had Delta, my favorite pen maker. But I discovered Scribo. I've discovered Omas. I've discovered Pennider, which are all beautiful Italian pens. What other pen makers? I've discovered Cypress from Taiwan. What a great pen maker. The variety of pens that Cypress has with their in-house 14 karat or 18 karat nibs, I think there's more to be had there. And 2025 will provide that for me. I've discovered Magna Carta, of course, that Indian pen maker, discovered Lotus, and continued to appreciate Vizier and Ranga. It's also, in terms of pens, it's also been the year of the Grail pen for me. I published 2 videos, very popular, Grail pen hunts and Grail pen alternatives. But in terms of the Grail pens that I've acquired the Pelican M1000, the Pilot 823, just because the Pilot Custom Marushi is on its way, the Sailor King of Pen, the Pennider Quill nib, or at least the quill nib part of it, the Scribo La Dotta, the Omas Crossflex, the Mag 600, I think, is a Grail pen, the Visconti Homo Sapien, the Parker Duofold, the Aurora Optima, the Delta Dolce Vita, which for me is the ultimate of all pens in terms of my own personal hunt, for reasons which all of you already know, those of you who watched my videos. In terms of Chinese pen makers, well, we had the usual suspects, although some were more active than others. We had Ong Dian, Asvine, Jinao, Wing Sung, Majon. But we've discovered some new ones on the scene, at least for me anyway. Admoc, I think it was one of the first to publish a review of an Admoc pen. And some now have declared it to be amongst their favorite. We have the Lemon pens. We have Trammell, who's come on the scene, and others. And I look forward to more from Chinese pen makers. There's been a lot of innovation. Their nibs are getting better and better. Their pens are getting better and better. Unfortunately, their imitation or their inspiration of existing models has grown as well, which is something that a lot of us kind of feel uneasy about. But on the other hand, the individual who can't afford that Mont Blanc 149 well, he can maybe enjoy what it feels like to have one through a Chinese pen. So there's something to be said about that, as long as it doesn't become a complete fake. If heavily inspired, I'm tolerant, and I will continue to show those pens for those of us who appreciate them. And I know it's controversial, but I think there's a place for them, and why not? That's my theory. And if you don't appreciate that kind of thing, then, the beauty of YouTube, as I always say, is you don't have to watch that particular episode and just, or even rant and rave and say, Vincent, I don't think, that pen is worthy of mention. And that's okay. That's absolutely okay. And I don't discourage it in any way. Indian pen makers, well, there's Del Moon that I want to get into. I've already ordered one pen from them. They weren't delivering in Canada for some reason. I was having difficulty, but I reached out to the owner, and he's going to make sure that I get one, and we'll start with one, and we'll see where it takes us. I think Magna Carta has got something in line for us in 2025. I think their nib making is just going to get better and better, and I think we've got a couple of surprises from them. At least I hope. So those are essentially where we are, where we're going for pens for 2024 and 2025. What about paper and journals? Well, as you've seen, or you will be seeing, I've purchased in, oh, by the way, just in terms of pens, before we get on to paper and journals, I counted that I purchased in 2024 in excess of 150 pens, a lot of which were purchased as a pen collector, and a lot of them were purchased just so that I can feed the channel, so to speak, and entertain you. So none of them I think maybe I can count them in one hand, I regretted buying. So, and even the bad ones were okay, because I could share with you what not to buy. In terms of paper and journal, well, I've counted, and you'll see if it hasn't already been published. There's part 3 to my comprehensive guide to fountain pen therapy, fountain pen friendly paper. And I purchased in excess of 60 products in 2024 that I'm going to be or have shared with you in my part 3. And in all of that, I've come to one conclusion, that my favorite fountain pen friendly paper is without any doubt Tomoe River paper, but the Tomoe River original. And that's why I went out and kind of bought all the Tomoe River original notebook and paper that I can get my hands on, that hopefully will feed my hobby for the rest of my life. But I'm still looking. If I can find anything, I will keep buying. And which brings me to the conclusion that I've drawn in 2024 is that I don't like Tomoe River Sanson paper. It just rubs me the wrong way. I think there's a big difference between the original and the Sanson. And if I have to get any more Tomoe River, it's going to be the original if I can find it. In terms of journaling, I think I've also evolved. 2023, I was journaling my daily entries, and I found myself rehashing all the negative in my day, which for me provided absolutely no catharsis or stress relief or therapy. Some people enjoy that. In other words, putting down in writing what's not right can provide a lot of benefit there. For me, it wasn't the case. It just made me concentrate and focus on everything negative. And that's not what this was all about. So my journaling is about the positive. My journaling has become just experimenting with a nib, experimenting with an ink, experimenting with handwriting, and which leads me to handwriting. We'll discuss it in a second. So that's what my journaling is all about. I loved my journaling on vacation. You know, the pen makers I visited, the pen retailers I visited, the pens that I was enjoying and why I was enjoying them. The experimentation of putting down ink on paper with different inks, different paper, and different pens, and especially different nibs, is what provides or feeds the journaling aspect of my hobby. And which brings me to handwriting. I completely transformed my handwriting, folks. Until 2024, my handwriting was straight up. I don't know if you could, and I'll show you perhaps the difference by doing an actual writing sample and providing you with the difference of how I developed that handwriting. And by showing you some of the handwriting samples I have, and perhaps you can see the evolution there. I tend to go back and forth from a straight up handwriting to a kind of a more slanted handwriting. But, you know, I've discovered that in 2024 by experimenting with all kinds of nibs and getting away from the stub nib, which of course just embellishes in a natural way your handwriting. So there you have it. Well, maybe step away and I'll show you some of that sampling. Some of you who saw the weekly recap, you'll remember I went out and bought a bunch of books on Spencerian handwriting with practice sheets and calligraphy type of handwriting, French ruled notebook to practice with. I bought these very interesting books in terms of the history of penmanship and etc., etc., etc. That was the first thing I did. Very interesting exercise, I got to tell you. And then I put kind of all what I learned from all this to practice. Now I'm just going to show you a couple of things here. Here's the way I just went about it with this French ruled paper. I started writing a little more slanted and with finer nibs other than just stub nibs, which kind of enhance your handwriting. And I just kept on going, and I practiced and practiced and practiced. I tried all kinds of things. And this was not at a time when I hadn't discovered the flex nib, which is too bad because I would have had even more fun. But as you could see, I did a lot of practicing, different pens, different nibs, and I just went about just thoroughly enjoying it. Now, let me give you an idea of how the handwriting has changed. These are excerpts of my journal. So you can tell that the handwriting here is essentially straight up, okay? And that's my old style of handwriting. As you could see, it's pretty straight. There's no diagonal shift to it. As the year went by, this is the new handwriting now. So I have a tendency to slant my handwriting with all different types of nibs. And this is also the type of journaling I do, just scribbling, just dotting down, just experimenting with pens, with ink, and just having a ball. And this is, I think, part of one of my YouTube videos. And you can see that there's a definite change in the handwriting. It's gone from straightforward up and down to a more slanted version. If I could take just a few minutes of your time to demonstrate perhaps live what I mean. So typically I would use, this is a stub nib, one of my favorite stub nibs, a Stipula Steel number 6. And the way I would go about it, so let's say I'm describing this pen, I would and just just inventing here. I have no idea what I'm writing. And this is the London Pen Company. And if I would have to write fountain pen therapy, it would be written this way. So that's my old style. Let me just, yeah. And you see a lot of the Italian reviewers kind of write this way. What I'm doing now instead is this. Now, the lettering itself is not revolutionary in terms of changes, but it's just I find myself writing more on a slant, and it gives me a little more freedom in terms of positioning. So that essentially went from straight up to side. And I'm trying to make my lettering a little more elaborate, slowly working on my letters, but you know, we're getting there. We're getting there. So that's just a bird's eye view of the handwriting, and it's a work in progress, folks, and it's a lot of fun. Okay, I just thought that would be of some interest, and some of you can experiment with calligraphy, for example. I have my hands tend to shake a little bit, or at least my writing hand. Both of them do, actually. Nothing serious. It's not Parkinson's or anything. It's just a hand tremor. I've had it for in excess of 25 years. I find that fountain pen writing has improved it enormously. But depending on the days, I have better days and bad days and good days. And calligraphy is not in the books for me, but I try. I try to embellish my letters, and I think there's some more growth there for 2025 and experimenting, and why not? And why not? In terms of inks, well, 2024, I would say I purchased in excess of 50 different bottle of inks. Oh, at least 50. Some of which I enjoyed more than others. And I've come to some kind of conclusions, if you will. I think shimmering inks are beautiful for swatching, they're beautiful for painting, they're beautiful for enjoying your wide nibs, such as broad, but on a personal, everyday level, I'm staying away from shimmering inks. I've seen them destroy pens, and I've seen them, not pens, but at least nibs, and maybe pens. God knows what they did to the interior. And I'm not sure I appreciate them as much as I used to. That's not to say that I won't purchase some of them from time to time, but it doesn't become it's no longer a priority of mine, let's just say. That's one of the things I realized in 2024, and I think 2025 will continue to reflect that. I finally learned how to appreciate some of the better inks, like Iroshizuku, and the qualities of that ink. Dieman, can't go wrong with Dieman. Some of the more saturated sailor inks, not the light ones, but the darker ones, beautiful, just beautiful inks. And I've grown to take a look at some of the Italian inks, such as Scribo and Aurora, just Visconti, some great inks there as well. Then, of course, you got the punchy inks, the ones that trying to give you something different, including some of the shimmering, is Van Diemen's. We have Waringal, we have Ferris Wheel Press, although their bottles are awful. So these days I find myself not buying any of them until they change their bottles. I'm just not going to buy any of them. And, I've discovered the Chinese. inks. The Majon inks are just fabulous. The Angdian inks are very, very good. I know there's some Jinahao inks out there, and I think that maybe 2025 I'll see some of those through and see what they have to offer. But those two Chinese inks, and there's Pen BBS inks, I think are very good and something to look at and that I've learned to appreciate in 2024. So there you have it. Pens, paper, and journals. And what does 2025 in terms of the enthusiast hold for us? Well, I think that in terms of pen makers, there's a lot of pen makers that I need to revisit or visit for the first time. And here's a list of them, just a few. There's Armando Simoni. Leonardo, I've got to give them another go. I've discovered, and through some of my viewers had me research, I thought that the only nibs Leonardo made or used were Yowo nibs, be they Yowo steel or Yowo gold. And all they did is kind of put their branding on it. But I've discovered that the Leonardo La Fenice gold nib, especially the 18 karat and the 14 karat, may actually be in-house nib. Now, do they buy a nib and work at it to their specs? That's something I'm still investigating. But they're certainly not straight up Yowo nibs with a stamp on it. They've been modified. And so, you know what? I'm going to give Leonardo, I think, another look because of that. Because in terms of pens, got some gorgeous pens, different materials, different sizes, different models. But there again, am I going to keep buying Momento Zero Grandes? No. Am I going to keep buying Momento Zeros or Furores? No. I mean, I've got one. That's it. I think I'm going to focus on the nibs. And maybe provide some, or some of these sites provide nib grinding. So, I can enjoy a different grind. I'm curious about this needle point. I'm curious about developing my taste for architect nibs, which until now, other than those lemon nibs, I don't enjoy. But maybe there's something to be had about them. So nib grinding will definitely be part of my 2025 exploration, especially with the Yowo nibs. Other pen companies, Montegrappa. Well, I bought my first genuine, medium, modestly priced Montegrappa that I will review in 2025. I've got Molteni, an Italian pen maker. We've got Platinum that I haven't really enjoyed yet. Lamy, I had that Lamy 2000 experience, which was for me was awful, but I think there's some more Lamy pens there to be had and looked at. We've got Conway Stewart. I haven't even started yet. We've got Onoto, Onohat, Cypress. I'd like to explore further. Del Moon, I mentioned, will be explored. St. Dupont. Then you got the oldies, the Schaefer, the Waterman, the Cross, the Parker, the Waldman. I think they may have some pens of interest there that I'd like to explore further. So rather than buy the same model, I think I want some variety, and 2025 hopefully will provide that. In terms of Grail pen hunts, well, they never end. Here's my list. I've got to get a Grail pen, a Montegrappa Grail pen. I mean, not the Frankenstein or anything that cost me $35,000, but there's got to be, and I've got a few in mind. And so Montegrappa will definitely be on the hunt. I got a Conway Stewart. I've got to have a Conway Stewart pen, and the Churchill is on my mind these days. Waterman, we've got my friend Hemingway Jones, who loves and absolutely swears by his Edson. And maybe, I've been looking at it. I've bid for a few, and I was outbid on Katawiki. But they're always in the hunt, especially the vintage ones. I've got the Pilot Custom Urushi, the big one. It's right here. It's right here. It's right here. It's about to be, acquired. I've got the OMAS 360. The Majon V60, if nothing else, has drawn my interest to the OMAS 360 or even the OMAS 360 Magnum or any triangular shaped pen. And I know that there's been a few, and even Peniter. And there's some, I think, beautiful Grail pens to be had there. You know what? I don't have a Pelican M800. I think it's time that I acquire one. What do you think, folks? So there you have that. We have the Kukari, the Cusiedo Kukari, which is on my list, and a Conid. Some of these pens will be used, or pre-owned, or just because I don't think I would be able to afford the brand new versions. But there you have it. In terms of what's in store for me for Chinese pens, I think nothing more than keep looking at them. They will always form part of my collection and part of my YouTube reviews. I will continue with Indian pens, Ranga, Vizier, Lotus, and maybe even Canwright, and hopefully Magna Carta, as I mentioned, will have something new for us in 2025. Inks and paper, well, I will continue to share with you different varieties of inks and different varieties of paper, and we'll see how my tastes develop, if anywhere, in 2025. So there you have it, folks. That completes my retrospective for 2024. If this gets published before the new year, I'd like to wish you all a very, very happy new year. If it gets published in 2025, I hope you've enjoyed your holidays, and I wish you all the best in 2025. In the following order: first of all, lots of health. Without health, folks, we're not going anywhere, So health is number one. Number two, enjoy your families, enjoy your loved ones. Sometimes we forget they're there, take them for granted. Enjoy them. And enjoy life in general. And, if fountain pen therapy can provide you any pleasure or joy, why not? We form an excellent, beautiful community that hopefully is growing by day. And you know what? You viewers are part of my fountain pen therapy. The comments that come in, the accolades, the sharing of tips, the sharing of different products, the sharing of different experiences, all of that to me is 2025 worthy, and I will share as much as I can with you, and please do not stop sharing your experiences with me. That's what I hope for, and if we can throw in a little bit of success and a little bit of moolah so that we can, kind of keep on with this hobby, but not only that, obviously make a living. I think that's important as well. And if we can make a better living, all the best. We all have our limitations and we all try to work with them. But you know what? Lots of success for all of you. Grazie molto. Thank you very, very much again. Happy 2025.